are not happy with me. Oh dear. Oh dear. Alright. The forecast predicts Hornet. 13 years of training at the academy wasted. They told me I'd be fighting terrorists, not fucking beetles. A long time ago, in the Paleolithic era of the PS2, D3 Publishers' Simple series was doing rather well in Japan. This was a line of budget games, offering kind of no-frills representations of basic gaming concepts. Stuff like Simple Chess, it's chess, that type of thing. And because these games were quite cheap and quite easy to make, it meant that they had a lot of room to experiment with different ideas, and overall, these were pretty popular. Poor people deserve games too. Anyway, one day, in collaboration with the developer Sandlot, they decided to aim a little bit higher without sacrificing the core ethos of the Simple series, and thus came Simple 2000 Volume 31, The Earth Defense Force, eventually released outside of Japan as Monster Attack. They followed up with a sequel 2 years later, and in spite of these games' repetitive nature, the dated graphics, and just this general aura of jank and cheapness, the series garnered a small but dedicated following, because the simple premise of annihilating ludicrous hordes of giant insects, legally dubious kaiju, and these, it just proved successful enough to build a franchise around, from which EDF has blossomed, bloomed, you could say, into something truly unique and remarkable. There's nothing else like EDF out there. There never has been, and there never will be. And so I just wanted to take some time to talk about my personal relationship with the series, how I got into it. EDF 6 just came out recently, and that game's a fucking blast. We'll get there when we get there. If you haven't tried these games before, please give them a go. The series deserves all the love in the world, and I hope to see it continue in years to come.
I can't believe my eyes! A huge spaceship is floating above the city! It looks like something out of a science fiction movie!
Anyway, like many people, my first exposure to the series came from EDF 2017, which was kind of a loose remake of the original. Anyway, it came out on the Xbox 360, and I remember reading about this one in gaming magazines at the time, and the reviews were just confused, but mostly positive. IGN put it quite nicely here. They said, technically speaking, Earth Defense Force 2017 is not a good video game. Everything from the visuals to the level design just screams low budget in an all too unflattering way. Yet, I just spent the past weekend playing nearly 22 hours of the game. How does it happen that a game can be so horrible and so horribly addicting at the same time? Also, watch this fucking trailer.
In 2017, these entities arrived. They did not come in peace. They came in a mothership. They're going home in a body bag.
Suffice to say, I don't think I was emotionally prepared for these games. The series is something else, In a lot of ways, this one's like the platonic ideal of an EDF game. It's like the entire series condensed down into its core components. Make no mistake, EDF 2017 might be the ugliest game on the Xbox 360. And somehow it feels even more arcadey and basic relative to the era that it was released in. You don't even have a reload button, for fuck's sake. You don't deserve one. Empty the clip, you fucking animal. But the schlocky presentation, ridiculous voice acting, and just over-the-top feeling of it all was simultaneously hilarious and engaging to me. Firing a comically overpowered rocket launcher into a group of ants and watching them fly off into the stratosphere just reignites the caveman part of my brain that understands big explosion equals good. Like, if you don't understand that appeal, then I can't explain it to you. It's like trying to explain a rainbow to a blind person. It just doesn't work. Another big appeal of EDF is having the freedom to approach missions in really creative, dynamic ways to overcome the stupidly unfair odds that the series will sometimes throw at you. Your average EDF game has a metric shit-ton of weapons to unlock, ranging from standard military assault rifles to like triple-shot grenade launchers and ludicrous sci-fi blasters that look like they came out of a cereal box or something. But you'll only get the good shit by playing on higher difficulties, and oh my god, these games can get pretty fucking insane once you start cranking that dial up. Missions usually take place in these wide open areas, and enemies will often only aggro at specific junctures, or if you deliberately draw their attention, giving you plenty of time to plan your attacks accordingly, get into a good position, that type of thing. Not all weapons are useful, but some also have unexpected utility, like this weird bomb thing with monstrous damage and a 5-mile blast radius that you can only throw about 4 feet in front of you. Beyond situational. But it clears out mission 44 really nicely, since you start at the top of a tall cave with an army of spiders underneath you and you can just drop bombs on them from the high ceiling. Plus you can use it to nuke the kaiju if you're careful with your placement. It's all a matter of risk versus reward. You can only bring 2 weapons with you into any mission, so you really have to think, okay, what am I sacrificing here? What benefit does this weapon specifically bring me?
This is confidential. Now the South American Command Center appears to have been destroyed. Contact has been lost with EDF forces in the Middle East, Far East, and Siberia. It appears that we're the only ones continuing to fight back.
Actually acquiring all these weapons, though, that's another story. See, weapons drop from enemies entirely at random. You have to pick up these little green boxes as you go through the mission. And any that you don't collect by the end, those are just lost forever. Missions end immediately as soon as you kill the last enemy, so you have to kind of decide for yourself, right, how do I find space in this mission, while I'm being attacked, while I've got all these things shooting at me constantly, to pick up all the boxes. A lot of the time what you'll end up doing is you'll leave one enemy alive so that you can kind of do a lap around the area and pick everything up. But even then, let's say you pick up 20 boxes in a mission, there's a chance for you to get duplicates of weapons that you already have, and it would take quite a while for the series to solve this issue. But in 2017, if you get a duplicate of a weapon, that's just, you've wasted your fucking time completely. Also, like I said before, some of these missions, they get pretty difficult, and you'll really be relying a lot on your NPC allies, both to draw attention and also just to, provide a little bit of extra damage on top of what you can dish out too. But they're not very good at keeping themselves alive, so that's just another thing for you to pay attention to in the midst of all this unfolding chaos constantly happening around you. It's also worth mentioning that your health is upgraded the same way that you acquire these new weapons. You have to pick up the armor drops that come from enemies, exactly the same as you would, to acquire new weapons. The problem with this is, adding all these elements together does result in quite a bit of grinding, and this is a constant throughout the series, especially in 2017. I think it's at its absolute worst, because the amount of health you need to survive the higher difficulty missions is borderline ludicrous. You can see here, my armor is capped out at 3,400 something. It'll kind of fluctuate over the course of this video, but say about 3,400. I've seen people who've gone all the way up to the max, which is 9999, and still been unable to get through some of these Inferno missions. It's a lot. And you might say to yourself, oh, well, if you don't get hit, then, you know, armor isn't a problem. Except it is, because avoiding damage in these games, not always down to your decision. Sometimes the game just says otherwise. But yes, grinding. Grinding is a core part of the EDF experience. You will find yourself farming enemies on multiple occasions, either because you found a good mission where they're endlessly replenished, or just because, you know, you default to that old strategy of, hey, keep one alive and then mop up everything in the area. If you're looking for those better weapons, then you really need to try and find a mission that you can cheese on Inferno. For EDF 2017, I like mission 21 myself, because these red ants don't have a projectile attack, so you can kind of kite them a bit more easily, and this one's good for getting some early Inferno drops. But again, you'll find your own way of doing things, and I do recommend moving up to hard as soon as possible, just so you can keep up with the demanding challenges of this game, because the weapons that you get on normal, they just don't cut it. They're just not good enough. But yeah, EDF 2017, really good, great, dumb fun. If you're looking for a challenge, if you're looking for something with a lot of replay value that will keep you occupied, this game will do it, but like I said, you know, keep in mind the fact there's going to be some grinding, and the difficulty isn't always what I would describe as fair. So a lot of your time on the higher difficulties will be spent learning to overcome the bullshit. But anyway, this game was obviously successful enough for them to, start pushing the series a bit more seriously. And so, much later down the line, I found my eyes drawn to another installment in the series. This is Insect Armageddon, developed by Vicious Cycle, whoever the fuck they are. It was intended to be a more Western take on the standard EDF formula as a spin-off, rather than like an entry into the main series. And coming back for the first time in a decade, I realized I never really played much of this one back in the day.
Boring.
The game opens with this really out of place and unnecessary turret section, before dropping you in as normal, and just immediately everything feels kind of wrong. The controls are bound really awkwardly, and they just feel radically different to the mainline games. Like, the movement feels weird, the physics feel weird. It just causes a lot of problems if you have prior knowledge of the series, and I can't imagine it feeling great even if this was your first EDF game. There's also this Gears of War style action reload, which again just doesn't feel right. Like, you have to press it way earlier than you think you do. The timing doesn't seem to quite match the bar. But okay, so I adjusted fairly quickly, and I'm having some degree of fun killing bugs as usual. But the more stoic presentation really does suck some life out of the proceedings. Like, I'm not a fan of this game's direction, the art style, how everything feels so, like, hardcore and edgy. And the ultra-serious, tough guy dialogue really doesn't gel well with the nature of this series. It just feels totally ridiculous compared to the mainline EDF games, which were kind of light and campy and colourful. Granted, this game certainly looks better than 2017, even if I don't necessarily like the enemy designs. I mean, look at what they did to my poor Hector here. Like, I'm sorry, this just looks awful. But again, even this comes with a caveat. The enemy hordes are a lot smaller than you're typically used to. I'd say maybe about half as large as most other EDF games, and the frame rate definitely struggles. I think it aims for 30 on a good day, but you're not getting there consistently. So the whole thing just feels kind of stuttery and weird. It doesn't take too long before the biggest problem starts to emerge, though: the mission structure. Instead of having short, high-octane missions like we normally see in EDF, Insect Armageddon goes for these long, tedious marathon levels that just don't know when to fucking stop. Destroying these gunships takes too long. They have a billion HP and take forever to put down. Destroying these anthills takes too long, since now you have to go over and plant explosive charges on them instead of, just shooting them with the guns that you have. These little tick things ripped straight from, again, Gears of War, they latch onto you, and you have to mash the least convenient button on the controller to get them off before they explode. Everything in this game is just obfuscated to the point of meaninglessness. Any activity which should take 2 minutes instead takes 10. Though I do appreciate them experimenting more with mid-mission objectives beyond everything must die, to be honest, these usually just translate to go here or defend this instead, which generally means killing everything anyway, so what's the point exactly? I don't get it. The objective-to-objective mission structure mostly just results in you ferreting around, contending with enemy spawners, and just a lot of running, and running, and more running. It's just, this game is just excess. Insect Armageddon also expands on the playable roster, which is a little bit more interesting, through the use of a class system. So one guy is basically just your dude from 2017, he's very no-frills, very basic. One guy uses a battery pack to fuel both their weapons and to fly around, so there's a bit of resource management going on there, but again the flying feels kind of slow and awkward, doesn't feel too great. One guy... Look, he does something involving turrets and support tools, honestly, who the fuck cares? And lastly, there's another guy who stomps around tanking everything with an energy shield, aka the only one I actually liked playing as. Look, the bug zapper is kind of fun to abuse and he feels really overpowered. In this game you take what you're given, okay? The upgrade system extends a bit beyond armor and health here. You can even upgrade these classes' abilities, like you can get this Pulse Blast for the battle armor, again, best character, once you've completed a few missions, and I don't really know what causes you to level up in this game. You gain experience from doing stuff, but the game's kind of vague on how any of it works, really. The unfortunate side of this is that it means all these characters are a bit gimped when you first start out, because they're lacking what you might call crucial abilities to solidify their identity. They all get a similar assortment of weapons, they all get assault rifles, they all get rocket launchers, so as a result they don't really feel as different as they could, or should, when you first start the file, and it's only after you've played for a substantial amount of time that the classes really start to differentiate from one another. But because they all upgrade and gain weapons separately, you're incentivized to commit to one character anyway, so the class system just feels undercooked here. You have to buy your weapons now for some unfathomable reason, and again, they don't transfer over, so even though everyone gets assault rifles, nope, it's one assault rifle per class, and you're starting to see why I don't play this game very often. I feel like I'm really coming at Insect Armageddon in this video, but look man, it's still kind of fun. I mean, underneath all the bullshit, it's still EDF, like shooting giant bugs is inherently appealing, like I said before, but I'd say skip this one. Even the positives of this game aren't really enough to outweigh the negatives that I've just described. There's a ton of other minor annoyances as well that aren't really worth getting into here, and any fun you can have here will be more than matched, if not immediately surpassed by other games in the series, so yeah, I'd say give this one a miss. Everything would change for the franchise though, when EDF 4 landed in 2013. For the purposes of this discussion, I will be using my experience with the next-gen re-release for the PS4 titled EDF 4.1 Shadow of New Despair. More of a full-on remake than a remaster, 4.1 rebalanced a few things, fixed a bunch of bullshit, added loads of extra content, and is overall a much more complete experience compared to the original release. No one out there is playing EDF 4 in its base form anymore. If we're talking about this game, we're talking about 4.1. And let me tell you, 4.1 is an absolute banger of a video game. A full-blown retool of the series with better production values, tighter gameplay focus, and more content than I could ever show off in this video. This is where EDF starts getting really, really good, and it's mostly uphill from here, so let's get into it.
This is a special news flash. We are broadcasting to you live from the scene. What in the world? Wait! People are being attacked by giant insects! Let me go! Thought to have been exterminated 7 years ago, the insects actually survived!
The whole 4-character class system makes another appearance here, but in a much more meaningful and nuanced way this go around, with each class offering distinct strengths and weaknesses for you to either take advantage of or be forced to compensate for, depending on the situation ahead. Now, each character has their own unique selection of weapons, tailored to their specific abilities, which allows for a lot more variety in gameplay and caters to a greater variety of playstyles as well. The Ranger is your typical boring but practical choice, often going in with the old reliable combination of rocket launcher plus assault rifle, which is good for basically anything. But he kind of lacks the X factor of the other classes. He still packs some funny stuff, like his weird grenades and shit, but overall he's a no-nonsense, get-shit-done kind of guy. More uniquely, he can actually heal NPC allies, meaning they might be able to stay alive for more than 2 minutes and maybe actually contribute to the mission. The NPCs in this game are a lot more impactful compared to the NPCs that we've seen previously. They can actually successfully aggro things now. They can hold their own in combat, and some of them come equipped with quite high level weaponry when you start cranking up the difficulty. So the Ranger's ability to heal them and keep them alive, genuinely helpful. There's legitimate strategy to clustering everyone together and pumping them full of healing items. The Wing Diver returns, this time without pants, with a menagerie of energy weapons that are very powerful, but still drain from your tank when either firing or reloading, depending on the weapon, meaning it's easy to get carried away with them and strand yourself with a dead battery, or even get stun-locked by projectiles if you don't fly cautiously. Her guns are so unfairly powerful though, nothing will ever touch you if you can manage your airtime effectively. I'm a die-hard Wing Diver in this game, and basically all the sequels. So, trust me when I'm saying this, Wing Diver's a good time. The Air Raider is a really interesting character. He has access to a lot of overpowered airstrikes and satellite cannons, that type of thing, as well as a really wide variety of turrets and vehicles to pick from, but he lacks mobility options when he's on foot. He also has to actually earn access to his airstrikes and vehicles mid-mission by killing enemies, meaning you might be forced to use his BB guns and Roombas, or like lay down some turrets or something just so you can earn those credits and actually start using the powerful weapons you brought with you. So there's a really high skill ceiling to this character. He feels like he's more geared towards multiplayer, but he can definitely succeed solo if you know what you're doing. And lastly, we have the Fencer. The Fencer has some incredible mobility with the right weapon setup, and you can equip 4 different weapons per mission. You can even double them up if you really want to and go like double Gatling gun or double missile launcher if that's what takes your fancy. But it requires a lot of practice to control his movement. His mobility is heavily centered around the fact that he has access to either a short-range dash or a short-range jump. But those are tied to specific weapons, so, you know, depending on what you want to bring, you may have to sacrifice one or both of those options in order to get, you know, the right setup going. His lower level weapons are also particularly garbage, so his early game can be a bit of a struggle. The Fencer takes time, the Fencer's a bit of a commitment in order for him to really hit his full potential. But man, that potential DPS is really something insane. Also, there's this shit. Establishing this class system with these 4 characters was by far the most important thing that 4.1 added to the franchise. These characters will be elaborated on and explored further in the later games, gaining some buffs and nerfs along the way, and they help the series to establish a really solid identity going forward. Who do you main? How do you want to approach things? Again, it comes back to that concept of freedom and creativity that made me fall in love with 2017 in the first place, and, you know, it only gets better from here. To this day, I might argue that 4.1 has the best missions in the series too. The enemies have been rebalanced since 2017, the spiders in particular aren't total fucking murder machines anymore, and the new enemies introduced provide a nice little change of pace and they interact well with the class system, like these D-Roy death machines and the dragons? Which are also giant insects, somehow.
So is this the final form of the giant insect's evolution?
Also, I cannot go without saying that the more cinematic presentation really lets them milk that EDF norm for all it's worth. Behold, giant robots punching giant dinosaurs. It's great. It's like watching a kid play with his action figures. It's fucking good stuff. The iconic singing also makes its debut here.
From vicious giant insects who have once again come back. The EDF deploys.
Despite all the good things I've said so far, there are still a few teething problems though. Again, classes all upgrade independently, making it harder to experiment with their unique toolkits without, more grinding. On that note, Mission 4 can be cleared relatively easily on Inferno, so I'd get on that as soon as you feel comfortable doing so. And the Wing Diver gets a free pass on Mission 26. Jump up into one of these trees, watch your guys get murdered for a minute, then spam a rapier for some easy drops from the red ants who can't hit you. The fact that you still have to cheat the system like this is still a problem though. They also haven't quite worked out the vehicle controls yet either. In 2017 these handled like absolute garbage, and sadly they're pretty much the same here. Hence why most of my air raider footage uses the depth crawler. It actually has some degree of mobility once you get used to it, and gluing some turrets onto its back will never cease to be funny. Overall though, this game is just fucking awesome. This was the major turning point that catapulted EDF out of the shadow of obscurity. The game did well enough to warrant 2 DLC packs, which are incredibly difficult. Fuck these gold ants, seriously. But they reward you with high-level drops if you can stomach the pain. All the PS4 games will follow this practice, by the way, so the challenge is there for you if you want it, but it's not mandatory. But yeah, this game's great. There are many people who will call this the best game in the franchise. I don't know if I'd necessarily go that far. I think it's still held back in a couple of areas, but man, what a retool. Good stuff. Well done, Sandlot. Now, compared to the way that 4.1 completely redefined what EDF is and could be, EDF 5 was more about fine-tuning the experience even further, drawing on the progress made from 4.1 and ironing out some of the kinks and minor frustrations. As a result, the classes have all been adjusted slightly, adding some new movement options for everyone. Well, apart from the air raider, because fuck the air raider, and making the differences between them even more pronounced in the process. The new enemies introduced here are also a great addition. Though we mourn the loss of Hectors, our blessed noodle children, the addition of the now legendary 18-foot-tall frogmen with Gatling guns does soften the blow significantly. These enemies, among the other humanoids, have much better AI and they'll actively flank you and take cover mid-combat, forcing you to play a lot more tactically, especially when you're facing them alongside the regular buggers and flying saucers. The new dismemberment system is also really fun to mess around with, and it actually serves a gameplay purpose as well, since you can cripple an enemy by kneecapping them or disarm them by, well, you know. Most importantly, and let me scream this from the mountaintops for a second, characters now upgrade simultaneously. The game now simply prioritizes whoever you're currently playing as, but still lets you earn armor and weapons for the other characters as you go. This is an immensely positive change for the franchise, and eliminates a ton of grinding in the process, while also making it easier to jump between characters as you progress the story. They also finally figured out how to solve the problem of duplicate drops. Collecting a weapon you already own will now level up the weapon in question, sometimes in quite meaningful and impactful ways, so it's much more likely that you'll gain something useful from every mission, even if it's not necessarily a new weapon. Some of the vehicles control a bit better too, emphasis on some, mind you, but let's be grateful for small mercies. And the extra support equipment available for all characters are a really nice addition. They make the customization feel even more personalized and granular as you learn and develop these characters further. I should also touch on the performance issue, which has kind of plagued this franchise for a while. Your typical EDF game is going to have a lot of enemies on screen, and it's just as well that the graphics have never been particularly good, because otherwise these games would run at the speed of a PowerPoint presentation. I have mainly been playing these games on the PS5, and trust me, these games run substantially better on more modern hardware, but I still have memories of playing 4.1 on the PlayStation 4, and when things get hectic, these games tend to struggle a bit. EDF 5 is a significant step in the right direction in that department. You'll very rarely see this game drop frames, and when it does, it's only when things get truly, truly chaotic. Again, if you're playing this on a PS5, you will have no problems whatsoever, so come on, just get these on PS5. It must be said, though, that the missions in 5 are less memorable overall than 4.1's selection. They even recycle a few of the more noteworthy missions wholesale, like, okay, robots punching dinosaurs, we've been here before, guys, come on. Missions also tend to be quite repetitive, with similar enemy formations and recurring motifs throughout the campaign. While all the under-the-hood changes are fantastic and help to alleviate some of the more frustrating design choices that we've tolerated throughout the series thus far, when I think of the great, memorable set pieces and missions from this franchise, EDF 5 doesn't immediately come to mind, and I've played a lot more of EDF 5 than any other game in the series, so that really says something. When I first recorded this segment, I said that I felt EDF 5 was more of an expansion pack than a sequel to 4.1. And on reflection, I don't necessarily think that's the case. Make no mistake, EDF 5 is still a great game, and it does what a true sequel should do. It doubles down on what 4.1 did right, and fixes some of the key issues that people complained about, even if 5 does lack its own identity in some aspects. It's a transitory step for the franchise, a period of growth and development. You know, like when you turn 30 and have to juggle playing video games with not dying of malnutrition. I've said for a while now that my perfect EDF game would be a mega mix of both 4.1 and 5, using the foundations of 5, the mechanical structure, all the under-the-hood changes that I mentioned beforehand, to support the more dynamic mission design of 4.1. And, well, let's say we'll get pretty close to that in the future. For the time being, though, EDF 5 was a fun, welcome addition to the franchise that, even if it played things a bit safe, paved the way for the series to continue in the future. Before we get there, though, I'd like to talk about EDF Iron Rain, a second attempt at a more westernized EDF game, this time developed by Yuke's. You know, Yuke's. The guys who did fucking Evil Zone for the PS1 and generic wrestling game. Hey, I don't know, this one seems okay. Look, he's hugging his friend. I'm gonna be honest with you here. I'm not 100% sure where to start with this one. The game is quite polarizing in the community, and I have a lot of words to say about Iron Rain myself, but this video is getting really, really long already, and I don't want things to go on forever, so I'll try and only cover the bare essentials here. You can play the game for yourself and make up your own mind. So, compared to Insect Armageddon, which this game superficially resembles, Iron Rain sports a much more familiar mission structure and design philosophy, and is therefore much more immediately approachable for veterans of the series. The American military art style is executed a lot more effectively in this game, I think, and the pervasive air of camp and over-the-top stupidity is more in line with what you would typically expect from EDF. This game doesn't take itself anywhere near as seriously, and I think that's for the best. You do get a decent variety of missions here, which is nice, you know, defend the base, stall the timer, that type of thing. But the core mission objective never strays too far from killing things in a wide open area. So things stay pretty stable, and you're still afforded that degree of flexibility that I've always liked in a defense force. It's not as rigid as Insect Armageddon. Unique to this game is an overdrive mechanic. Once per mission, you can temporarily gain access to some huge stat boosts and some class-specific perks for a short period of time. Knowing when to pop your overdrive will help to alleviate the sometimes monstrous difficulty in this game, and can significantly speed up a mission's flow, which is always great for keeping the pace going. But to break the illusion of reviewer objectivity for a second here, does any of this matter? because my entire opinion of this game revolves around the Prowl Rider, aka the best class in the series. You fling yourself around on grappling hooks like Spider-Man on ketamine, and when that doesn't work, you summon your own giant insects to ride on. Prowl Rider is love. Prowl Rider is life. Best. Best. There's stuff I don't like about this game, like they brought the stupid weapon shop back again, and despite including a practice room, which I greatly appreciate, there's no way to try out a weapon before you buy it, and the economy in this game is just awful. This idea is fundamentally flawed. It's dumb. If I find a new weapon, don't make me buy a fucking ticket before I can use it. But I'd still recommend giving this game a try for yourself if you're even remotely interested. Like I said before, opinions in the community have been very mixed, so maybe try it for yourself and just, see where you land on the spectrum. But as far as a westernized take on EDF is concerned, Iron Rain does a much better job of adapting the core essentials of an EDF game.
Yes! They did it!
Hey. So, I'd basically finished this video already, before I remembered that Yuke's also developed EDF World Brothers, the weird spin-off game with the LEGO graphics. I figured it was worth trying out just for completion's sake, and right now I have the runniest egg on my face because this game kinda rules. Don't be like me, don't let the art style put you off. World Brothers is a really charming self-parody of the series with some great gameplay ideas and includes nearly every version of every class seen throughout the entire series, plus like a million others, including, yes, the Prowl Rider. You bring a team of 4 with you for every mission and you can swap between them on the fly, even in mid-air, which lets you chain their abilities together in really fun and interesting ways, and it's just fun in that classic EDF way that's kind of hard to explain, but it should make sense to anyone who's picked up the controller.
You quick as lightning! Do not dishonor fermented beans!
Make no mistake though, beneath all this silly presentation and the colourful art style, this is still an EDF game at its heart, and as such the customization goes to insane depths. Now you've got 4 characters to think about, with all the different combinations of abilities and stuff. You're gonna get some value from this one if you really want to sink your teeth into it. I only played it for like 2 hours as of this recording, but I guess leave me a comment if you would like to see me cover World Brothers in more detail. There's a sequel too, I assume that one's probably pretty good as well. I don't know, maybe we can do an Iron Rain World Brothers Yuke's special. You tell me what you want to see and I might upload again in the next 5 years.
Something seems off.
Finally, we come to EDF 6, the most recent mainline game and also the loudest, most bombastic game in the entire series. This, right here, does exactly what I asked for. It carries forward the improvements made in EDF 5 and gives them room to breathe in the more purposeful and fleshed out approach to mission design we see here, with some really well thought out encounters, better pacing, and a huge selection of enemies both old and new. Maybe there's a reason why this one actually sold. In addition to all the gameplay improvements that you'd typically expect from a numbered entry in the series, there's a much greater emphasis on story this time around as well, with a time travel plot which, while nothing particularly special, does integrate really nicely into gameplay, taking missions you're already familiar with and showing them from a new perspective throughout the campaign. The aliens have apparently had enough this time and are rewriting history on the fly, so every trip to the bad future will actually go a little bit differently. First go around you might have to deal with the Cruel, second go you'll see these fishmen, and on the third trip you get these things. fuck these things. My only real complaint with how the story is delivered would be these really slow, dialogue-heavy walk-and-talk sections. They're a bit too reminiscent of fucking Metroid Other M. Like, that's not something you want to be compared to, come on guys. They do definitely have their moments though, and the eventual reveal in Mission 107 is a nice, rewarding moment to justify everything that came before.
No matter how many times I do this, I never get sick of eating cheeseburgers.
Sergeant, don't be fooled. That man is no new recruit. He's a hero.
A hero?
The new enemies I mentioned earlier are a great challenge too. There's a ton of them this time, and they're probably the most threatening creatures the series has ever seen, especially the Cruel, which seem intentionally designed to force strategic play, with their energy shields encouraging you to actively distract and dismember them. Also, those fishmen, with their toxic death cloud who will easily wipe out entire squads of NPCs if you don't kill them quickly enough. They're interesting. I don't really know how I feel about the fishmen as a concept, but like, they're kind of fun to kill. I'm not too keen on this dragon. You fight it way too many times, and it can't be killed until the game gives you the Godzilla Maser tanks in a late game mission. But the everyday mooks are interesting and varied enough to help stave off any feelings of redundancy. The enemy variety really is one of EDF 6's best features. It stops missions feeling identical from each other when the enemies themselves, which are the main event, are so drastically different from each other. So I think it does deserve to be mentioned in detail here. That's something that EDF 6 fucking excels at. Be warned though, EDF 6 is easily tied with Iron Rain as the hardest in the franchise, and the new monsters are largely the reason for this, so strap on those boots, bucko, the aliens ain't playing around this time. On a side note, the vehicles control probably the best they ever have, and the classes have also had some minor adjustments for comfort and playability. Shoutouts to the Air Raider, who was just completely redesigned for this game. He now comes equipped with an army of drones and tiny little toy helicopters, in addition to his usual airstrikes and mechs, so he's not as useless when he's on foot, and close quarters combat doesn't feel anywhere near as frustrating with him anymore. It was midway through one late game mission when I found myself getting distracted by the level of detail they put into all these wee shops and cafes scattered around the city. I 100% promise you, no one gives a shit about this apart from me, but it's a testament to the developers' dedication that they know, eventually, someone will stop to look at the shops, and it might just make that person smile for the first time this decade. Look, they even included an arcade with posters of EDF 2017 and weird little games playing on the cabinets. I feel so validated right now. The game is still fairly new, so I'm hesitant to spoil more than I already have, but if you were considering 6 as your entry point for the series, maybe because, I don't know, Donkey made a video on it, then I'd say go for it. 6 is a high point for EDF, a game which directly benefits from everything that came before it and the years of experience accumulated by the developers. Did I mention the entire series supports local split-screen multiplayer?
That ant just went, "Look out, Mr. President," as I threw that grenade.
Once you've played this game for a long time, you get used to the different spray patterns of, like, the ant acid attack, and you kind of, like, there are certain patterns that you can jump through more easily than others. It's the sort of thing you just learn through, like, muscle memory. Catch these hands.
It's the same weapon.
No, it's different. This one's pink.
Ooh, that's...
This feels offensive somehow. I'm leaving, I don't like it.
Oh, they're wasps. Oh, I don't like that.
Have you fought these before? They rain needles down on you.
Oh, I don't like this. And I got rid of the flamethrower.
Shit.
Mark, you should have said. You should have said.
I forgot. Good shit.
Don't like it.
You did fine.
I don't like it. That's too realistic, man. Don't like it.
Yeah, I can probably kill these nests way faster than anyone else. Just be, oh god, missile. That's fine. Just gonna let it do
It
its
was
thing.
locked on.
Oof.
I've noticed my grenades are helping quite substantially.
I think all our guys are dead, so they're gonna, yeah, all our guys are dead, they're gonna come straight for us now. meanwhile the scientist guy's like, did you know I lost my wife and child? And all the other soldiers are like, yeah, no shit, we all did.
EDF.
And beating their chests.
I have interesting views on militaristic shenanigans. So,
you mean like in real life or in fiction?
Oh, IRL. Like, these games are fine. I fucking love these games.
So just to clarify, do I cut this part out of the recording or do I keep it in?
You can probably cut this part out.
Intermission over.
Yeah. When I spout bullshit opinions when I'm slightly drunk, maybe there's to cut them out.
Yeah, man, I never believed that you supported the IRS this entire time. Like, you know, I can't believe you just admitted that to me. But like, hey, whatever pleases you, man.
Isn't the IRS the American tax agency? Don't you mean the IRA?
God, I fucking love Earth Defense Force. This series never wanted to be AAA. It never wanted to be a movie or an experimental work of interactive storytelling. All this series ever wanted to be was fun. Earth Defense Force is very, very fun. Hey, did you know you can play as the frog in World Brothers?